beginning of urodynamics, you do something called as urethral pressure profile. Urethral pressure profile, correct? So that is what I said. So what happens is that we first do a non-instrumented uroflowmetry. Then the patient comes, sits on the chair, urodynamics chair, and then we empty the bladder. We see the post-void residual. After we empty the bladder, we put in the catheters, right? I've told you that the catheter that goes into the bladder has two transducers, right? I use air charge and urologists use water perfused, but in air charge you have two different transducers. You cannot use the water perfused one to do urethral pressure profiles. So basically, you will have a bladder transducer that measures the bladder pressures. That's at the tip of the catheter, and little around around 5 centimeters inside is the urethral transducer, right? So what happens is when I'm doing urethral pressure profile, what do? I put the transducer completely inside, the catheter completely inside, so then both the bladder transducer and the urethral transducer. So for example, if this is my finger and this is the point where the bladder transducer is there, right? And this is the point. So if you see this particular joint, right? This is a point where the urethral transducer is there, right? Now imagine when I'm doing urethral pressure profile, what do? Now, if this is the bladder, I will put everything inside. Okay, I will not see this is the bladder, this is the urethra. Now if I'm the transducer is going inside, I will put the catheter all the way inside so that both the bladder transducer and the urethral transducer are in the bladder. So they're both measuring bladder pressures. And then slowly with a mover, we start pulling slowly at 1 centimeter per minute. And 1 centimeter per minute. You kind of slowly, it starts getting pulled out. And then a point will come when this urethral transducer will come into the urethra, correct? When it comes to urethra, see, it's now gone beyond the bladder neck and it's coming to urethra. When it comes to urethra being a narrower tube as opposed to the bladder, the pressure will rise. It's basic physics, right? When your pressure transducer comes into a narrower path, the pressure will rise, right? So when pressure is so at this particular point, the urethral transducer is in the urethra and the bladder transducer is in the bladder, correct? So the bladder pressure will remain the same, but the urethral pressure will rise up like a bell shape and come down. Okay, so basically it'll go up and come down, and when it out of the bladder, out of the urethra, it'll come to almost zero. So when it goes up and comes down, the maximum rise over the bladder pressure is called as the maximal urethral closure pressure, MUCP. Okay, this is how we do urethral pressure profiles. Do you understand, Seema? Everybody understand that? Yeah, okay. Now, any other question, urodynamics? The other question I told you, I'll answer all of them. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I might take maximum 2 lectures a week. I can't take more than that because I have a busy life, but I will finish. You have time till the exams, right?
Ma'am, we have to finish till 11 June.
Huh? Till?
Lectures. 11 June.
All of them?
Mostly we have to finish. Last lecture we can take on the 11th June. Mostly.
Why is that? After that, me? Kyun?
1 month schedule will be completed till that time. So we have said that limit at the 11th June. Maximum till 11th June we can take. Because some students are having their exam in West Bengal and all that, they were having their exam from 12th June.
Okay, so then I'll take more lectures next week and we'll finish it off.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll take 3 more lectures next week and we'll finish it off. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll do Wednesday, Friday, 11th June. So 11th is 10th is when? Today is which day? I have only 5 days. Okay, so I'll take 2 more lectures and we'll finish it off all. Huh?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. But what happens if it goes beyond that? 11th June, kya ho jata hai?
No, nothing, ma'am. But the students are having exam. They are requesting, ma'am, to please try to finish before the exam.
When is the exam?
Some students are having it 12th June.
Oh.
Starting from the 12th June. So they want to finish before.
Okay, okay. I'll take more. I'll take lectures now.
Yes.
Tomorrow I can't take, but I'll take Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay?
Fine, ma'am.
Yeah, 9th, 10th, 11th I can take, right?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, fine.
Okay. Okay. Now let me start taking. So today I'll teach you POPQ and I'll finish overactive bladder. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
1 second. Because I finished SUI, then I will Exam dates have come. So when is the exam dates? 12th June, huh?
Somehow has told me that it is 12th June.
No, Anamika has written this, no?
Yes.
Okay, Preeti asked another question. Normal values for aerodynamics to be remembered for exam, like residual volume capacity. There's nothing like residual volume capacity. There's no capacity for residual volume. So even the term residual volume capacity is wrong. Correct? Residual volume is residual volume, not the residual volume capacity. So residual volume should be, I told you before also, right? That the residual volume is basically amount of urine remaining behind after you pee. Correct? Normally it would be like less than 150 is normal, 100 to 150. But it is always measured with respect to the previous voided volume. So what is a pre-void volume? If a pre-void volume is 600, then 150 is also okay. But if a pre-void volume is 300, then 150 is too much, right? So 1/3 of the pre-void volume is normal residual volume. Okay, so yeah, if a woman pees more than 1/3 of the, if she retains less than 1/3 of the pre-void volume. So for example, pre-void volume was 600, उसके bladder में 600 था, and she voided and only retained less than 1/3 of the pre-voided volume, right? That is okay, correct? Whose exam is on 12th June?
Some West Bengal students said me that their exam is from 12th June.
Okay. Anyway, so let's go on to overactive bladder का खत्म कर देंगे. Any other queries you have? Any other values you want to have? Normal, okay, low bladder capacity would be less than 300 ml. Okay. More than 300 to 600, like when we do aerodynamics, we don't ever feel more than 600. Okay. My only worry now, Meenal, before I go ahead, is that the topics are huge. Like they want me to do UTI, they want me to do prolapse, they want me to do fistula. 3 lectures. Because then I will be taking stupid upper lectures. You know, it won't be, you know, interesting. Huh?
We'll see what we can do, ma'am.
How many West Bengal students are there?
Ma'am, count I don't know, but some have requested me that.
Okay, let's take over to bladder now. I'm just going to the slides and just opening it up. Okay, 1 second. And Arun, I'll teach you hammock theory. When I take anatomy, I'll teach you all of those. Huh? The parts of the hammock. Okay. 1 second. Now I'm just sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
1 second. Okay, now overactive bladder, right? Now, what is overactive bladder? Now, when I kept on saying urgency incontinence is a part of overactive bladder, right? So, overactive bladder syndrome is urgency, a constant sense of urgency, frequency of more than 8 times in 24 hours, and nocturia, more than 1 time at night. It can be and or nocturia, with or without urgency incontinence. Okay, so overactive bladder is a wider kind of syndrome than just urgency incontinence. In urgency incontinence, you have leaking of urine also, correct? Whereas the overactive bladder syndrome is a larger thing where you have urgency, frequency being more than 8 times in 24 hours, and nocturia more than 1 time at night. It may be with urgency incontinence or without urgency incontinence. So the urgency frequency. So a woman who has repeated need to go to the bathroom also comes in this syndrome. But the most important thing is it is in the absence of any bladder pathology. Understood that? If you have bladder pathology, then it is not overactive bladder. So overactive bladder is a syndrome where you have no bladder pathology, meaning you have no bladder stone, you have no UTI, you have no bladder wall inflammation, you have no, cancer or any pathology that can happen in the bladder. So you rule it out, and the woman has urgency, frequency, nocturia without urgency incontinence. And this generally affects 20% of the population, right? So the thing is one of the most prevalent conditions worldwide, right? So if you look at OAB incidence, it's far more than asthma, bronchitis, heart disease, arthritis, chronic sinusitis. So 33 million women in the United States have overactive bladder syndrome. It's a very, very common and unreported condition. No one talks about it. You don't ask questions to women about how many times you go to the bathroom per day. No, so many women will have this whole habit, no, ki every time the only thing they think about is bathroom, right? So they will go to the bathroom in the morning. Suppose they have to go in 1 hour later to a mall, then they will go first to the bathroom before they leave the house. The once they reach the mall, the first thing they'll go do is go in the bathroom, correct? And then they will go around for half an hour, and then they want to again go into the bathroom. So the whole mind is always thinking of bladder, bathroom. They may not leak. Even that is a part of overactive bladder syndrome, right? So how do you treat it, right? The treatments are, first is conservative, and here conservative treatment really works, right? So you have bladder retraining and biofeedback. You have behavioral modification and fluid management, and you have pelvic floor exercises, right? Along with that, you will have pharmacology, certain medication, and then comes the procedures, right? Intestine and Botox. So the last thing I'm going to skim over, because I don't think your examiners are going to ask you too much about it, right? But you just need to know to complete the entire thing, right? Now, what are you trying to achieve with treatment, right? So I have already told you what happens with overactive bladder, right? What happens in overactive bladder is that your bladder is not listening to the brain. So you have a sensory issue and you have a motor issue. Understood? Right? What is sensory issue? Now, all of us sitting here, a point comes when the bladder is going to tell us need to go to the bathroom. Correct? All of us sitting, our bladder is filling. While I'm talking to you, while you're sitting and listening to me, bladder is filling. A point will come when our bladder will tell us we need to go to the bathroom. Correct? Now, normally that point will come in you and I after 300 ml. Less than 300 ml would be low bladder capacity, low functional bladder capacity. All of us will have it beyond 300 ml. The unfortunate thing about us doctors is, because we don't go to the bathroom at all, I'm sure we are getting it at beyond capacity, like beyond 700. I mean, I meet too many doctors who are going normally to the bathroom at 800 ml, 900 ml, because they've trained the bladder to hold more. That is also very bad. But in patients who have overactive bladder, some of them may have a pure sensory issue, meaning the sensation to go to the bathroom is coming earlier, right? These are women who are said to have something called as overactive bladder dry. Understand these terms, right? Overactive bladder dry would be, I have a sensory problem. I have this repeated need to go to the bathroom earlier than normal. Correct? That's overactive bladder dry. Now, other women not only may be having the need to go to the bathroom repeatedly, so they have overactive bladder dry, but they also may have overactive bladder wet, meaning the minute they have a sensation to go to the bathroom, the bladder stops listening to the brain, right? So I'm sitting in front of you. If I am full bladder, my brain will tell my bladder, now you can't pee in front of everybody. 150 people can't watch me pee, right? So my brain will tell my bladder, keep quiet, correct? It will maintain control. Only when I go to the bathroom, I excuse myself from you. I say, I want to go to the bathroom. I go to the bathroom, sit on the commode, close the door. Then my brain will give permission to the bladder. Okay, now you can go. So many women who, in whom they have, in addition to having early sensation, what they also tend to have is that the bladder stops listening to the brain and it starts contracting. So, and you leak on the way to the bathroom. So they are said to have overactive bladder wet. Correct? So these are these two terms you have to understand. But in both of these conditions, what do you need to do, right? Treatment is similar, more or less, for both overactive bladder dry and overactive bladder wet. The only thing you cannot do in overactive bladder dry is Botox. Botox only works in overactive bladder wet. That's the only thing. Other than that, everything I'm telling you is for both overactive bladder dry and overactive bladder wet, right? So what will you do, right? You will stabilize the detrusor muscle, meaning what you want to do is that you want the bladder muscle to remain shant. You want to increase functional bladder capacity. Remember, there's a difference between functional bladder capacity and true bladder capacity, right? Normally, see, the thing is this. In women who have got overactive bladder, they have no bladder pathology. So it's not as if the bladders have shrunken down, correct? Women who have got radiation, women who have got fibrosis of bladder, or because they've got bladder pain syndrome, bladder wall inflammation, they have this fibrous bladder. In those, the bladder capacity actually is decreased. So bladder has actually shrunken down. But in overactive bladder people, there's no shrinking of the bladder. It's only functionally they are going earlier, right? So you want to increase functional bladder capacity. You want to diminish the frequency of involuntary bladder contractions. and you want to delay the initial urge to void, right? These are what you want to achieve, right? You want to delay that urge to void, the initial feeling, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. You want to diminish the involuntary bladder contractions, and you want to increase bladder capacity by stabilizing the reducer muscle, right? So what will you do? Science, behavioral therapy, correct? Now, how will you do this, right? So, anyway, all that I told you during, if you remember the first lecture I said to you of evaluation, so bladder diary, all of that has already happened, okay? So I will look at the bladder diary, okay? In the bladder diary, I can actually sit down with the patient and show a lot of things to her, whereby she'll be able to actually modify her behavior, right? So it's education reinforcement, right? So I have given an example of a doctor who came to me from Patna, right? She was referred to me when I was my center in Delhi, right? So this doctor was referred to me by a urologist from Max, right? And this doctor from Patna was having both mixed incontinence. She had got stress incontinence severe 3 to 4 times a day, and overactive bladder urgency incontinence 3 to 4 times a day, right? And she came with really severe, like anxiety. She comes to me, I do her bladder diary, right? And I do her bladder diary. What do I see in the bladder diary? I saw that she was leaking every time she went to the bathroom, but she went to the bathroom only in 800 ml, 900 ml. So her bladder capacity had become that much because she's not go to the bathroom. Also, in my own examination examination, I told her, you sit normally when you go to the bathroom. Okay, well, let's do uroflowmetry, correct? So no, and so not that you wait till it's full bladder. Never do uroflowmetry when it's full bladder, right? So I did uroflowmetry. Normal, like this is normally when she will go to the bathroom, and she passed 700 ml. So what did I realize? Basically, she had postponed voiding. She had gotten her bladder used to holding lot of urine, correct? Now, this is a patient who, the one thing I had to do was, I told her, always go to the bathroom every 3 hours, no matter what. You understand? So go to the bathroom every 3 hours. The minute I put that, and I told her this, that if you go, even if you don't feel like going, okay, so it's called as, what is it called as? It's called timed voiding. Okay, so I imposed timed voiding on her. Okay, so when I impose timed voiding, I am taking control of the bladder. Like bladder has gotten used to holding more urine. So at the 300 ml point, at the 400 ml point, a 500 ml point, 500 ml would be great. At that point in time, she doesn't feel sensation. But when you impose time voiding on the woman, what happens is automatically, slowly, the bladder starts perceiving that as bladder capacity. So when I go every 3 hourly, I impose my own schedule on the bladder, then my bladder starts understanding that, okay, now this is my capacity. So it starts telling you earlier now, at 500 ml starts telling you going to go. So you imposed time voiding on the bladder and slowly got the bladder to give you sensation of going earlier. And after doing that, just this small thing, her leaking actually reduced by more than 2/3. Okay, both the SUI and urgency incontinence, right? So time voiding, right? Educating the woman. Okay, then so that's the first thing I've written here is charts and diaries, right? So you need to understand everything, right? Okay, now there are a lot of women who have got dementia. Okay, they also forget to go to pee, and then they leak because they're holding so much. Again, they will need time voiding. Okay, now delayed voiding is something I would do in people with sensory urgency, or to bladder dry, or women with overactive bladder wet, who also have going to the bathroom, like going to the bathroom every 1 hour. Correct? Now, how do I do delayed voiding? By doing pelvic floor exercise and biofeedback. Correct? When I strengthen the pelvic muscles over time, then what happens is that the woman learns earth suppression. And I will teach you that. I will first finish. I will talk about it a little later on in great detail, right? So, but just to give you a sentence on this, you strengthen the pelvic muscles either by doing Kegel exercises in good Oxford score. But if you got poor Oxford score, then I would do biofeedback, train them to contract the pelvic muscle well, and make the pelvic muscle strong, and then slowly teach them to go later and later. Okay, and when they feel an urge to go earlier, because the pelvic muscle is strong, you can contract your pelvic muscle and suppress that urge. So just spark it right now. I will teach this part a little later on. Okay, now very important thing at this point is fluid and diet management, right? Now, one very important thing to remember is that women drink too much nowadays, right? You do not need to drink 5 liters, 6 liters of fluid. what we normally tell women is, do not drink less than 5 glasses of liquid a day, but do not drink more than 8. Okay, one glass will be around 230 ml. Why do you not drink less than 5 glasses? A lot of women, because when they have got overactive bladder, like they repeatedly go to the bathroom or they're leaking, the one thing they start doing is drink less water. Correct? Now that's a very bad thing to do. Why is it bad to do? Now, what is urine? Urine is a collection of irritants, right? So when urine becomes concentrate, urine has less water. If you drink less water, urine will has less water, right? So it will become concentrated. So it becomes concentrated, and because urine is acidic and it collects all the gandagi of the body, it will start irritating the bladder. So less water intake leads to concentrated urine, which irritates the bladder. The condition becomes worse. So never drink less than 5 glasses of liquid a day, but never drink more than 8 glasses. That's what you tell them. 5 to 8 glasses a day is what you need. And when I say 5 to 8 glasses of liquids a day, I mean all liquids: tea, coffee, juice, whatever you drink. Okay. Now, diet management. Diet management may extremely important, right? So, what will I not give? Some of the most important foods, 3 important things, right? Alcohol is very bad for the bladder, right? Alcohol is out. Tea, coffee is very bad for the bladder. Anything containing caffeine is bad for the bladder. Caffeine irritates the bladder. Caffeine also diuretic, right? So you shouldn't have anything that has caffeine in it. That includes tea, coffee. Even tea has caffeine. Even green tea has caffeine. Some herbal teas like chamomile tea do not have caffeine. So I always tell them to have a decaf tea or decaf coffee, correct? Alcohol, right? And then artificial sweeteners are very, 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 very bad. Artificial sweeteners are pathetic, the most horrible thing for the bladder. Okay. Then amongst the foods, right? Citrus fruits, anything acidic, anything khatta is out. Correct? Lime, lemon, oranges, musambi, okay, amchur powder, raw mango, all of them are out. Okay, so acidic foods are out. Tomato is out actually. With onions, they don't only have organic onions, right? Many of the Indian spices are out. I don't think you need to go into great details of it because I have a whole diet chart. If you're interested, I can share it with you, but it become too much for you. Many of the Indian spices may, like for example, pepper is out, chilies are out. Then crushed fresh coriander is okay. Powdered coriander is bad for you. So a lot of these Indian spices are out, right? Oregano is okay. Then papaya is very bad for you. So if in our diet chart, we have this whole list of every food category. We have this list of foods that's not good for you. So we give the patients that list. But remember, mota mota, anything acidic is bad for you. Tea, coffee is bad for you. Aspartame is bad for you. I mean, sweeteners are bad for you, and alcohol is bad for you, right? And organic onions are okay for you, right? So and chocolate, milk products are not good for you, right? So milk is okay. Anything caffeine containing out of that is not good for you, right? So very important diet modification, fluid modification, diet modification. So every patient who comes to my clinic have very strict fluid modification, diet modification, right? Then very importantly, so first line management is diet modification, fluid modification, medication. I'm going to come to medication afterwards. I'm going to first teach you pelvic floor muscle strengthening. The fourth thing is pelvic floor muscle strengthening, right? So I already told you this. I'm going to repeat this bit for you, right? So you all remember Oxford score, right? So every woman, I have got to evaluation, right? In the evaluation, I told you that every incontinent woman you have to evaluate and look for Oxford score. If they have good Oxford score, that means they know how to do Kegel, correct? So you also taught you how to do Kegel exercise, right? So you put them on a really good Kegel, exercise regimen. Make them come weekly to ensure they're doing it correctly. But remember one thing, that half of the women, this is the enough studies which show that half of the women do not understand which muscles to contract, and 27% women actually do reverse Kegel. Okay, when you ask them to contract, they will actually push out, correct? So then that's even worse, right? So then in those patients and those patients with poor Oxford score, I would do biofeedback. What is biofeedback? Biofeedback is, I'm just giving you a brief. I already talked to you earlier. I'll just go quickly on that. I won't spend too much time on biofeedback. But biofeedback basically is that because they cannot identify their muscle, I will basically put a probe in the vagina or the anal canal, like it's a like an anal manometry probe hota hai. It's either a electrical thing that goes like it's like a probe that goes inside. See, once again, like a probe that goes into the vagina or the anal canal, and this probe can be either a soft rubber-like thing, anal manometry, we put in the anal canal, or it can be actually like it's like an electrical stimulation probe, which can actually pick up electrical stimulus when she contracts. So you put the probe in the vagina or the anal canal, ask the woman to squeeze around it. Correct? When she squeezes around it, she can actually see on the computer what she's doing. Okay, so what happens is that so you're basically giving the woman cues about how she's contracting. So when she's contracting, she can actually see on the computer. When she sees on the computer, she will know what should she do to better contract. Correct? So she comes to, so it's basically the woman is taught to consciously control muscle contraction, visual, auditory, or tactile signals, right? That's biofeedback. Here I'm using a visual cue, correct? So basically, at the same time, what do? I also have abdominal leads. I told you already that when you're doing pelvic floor muscle exercises, you're supposed to contract the pelvic muscles without contracting the abdominal muscles or the thigh muscle or the buttock muscles, right? You want to not contract anything other than the pelvic muscles, right? One second. Yeah. So I will have abdominal EMG leads, like ECG leads, like the abdominal EMG leads. So they're just being the umbilicus, I put them. So I will get a, you see this graph, I get an abdominal lead, abdominal graph, and a vaginal graph. You see this? Can you see this? Vaginal or anal graph. And here I can see basically if I'm asked a patient to contract, I can see her contraction rising, and I'm going to ask her to hold for 10 seconds, right? So in my biofeedback, I will take her through 10 to 20 sessions of 10-second hold, 10-second relax. Correct? And I'm going to be able to see when I'm asking her to contract, how with what amplitude she contracts and how long she's holding the contraction. Correct? At the same time, what will I see when I'm doing this? When she's doing this contraction, is she also contracting abdominal muscles? You see this? Here you can clearly see that the woman initially, when she contracted her pelvic muscle, she was not contracting her abdomen. But look at here, when she was contracting a pelvic muscle, she was contracting her abdomen also. So you train her how to, so she can see that wo wrong kar rahi hai. So you train her when she comes to your clinic, right? So you how to actually properly contract without contracting the abdomen. You also see how long she can hold the contraction and how many times, right? So if a woman, every woman, once a week she comes to me, I will do biofeedback. That means I'll take her through 20 sittings of 10-second hold, 10-second relax. I will train her how to contract properly. Also, I will see how many seconds she can hold, how many times. So if a woman can hold, say 4 seconds, hold only 4 seconds, she can't hold. Okay, and she can hold it 5 times maybe. Then I will give her homework to practice at home. What is the homework to practice at home? 2 seconds more than she can hold, 2 times more than she can hold. Okay, so suppose she can hold 4-second hold, 4-second relax 5 times. Her homework will be get up in the morning, go to the bathroom, come back, sit on the chair, squeeze the muscles to squeeze to prevent the faster gas, or squeeze in the clinic so that you've got a really good contraction, and squeeze 6-second hold, 6-second relax 8 times, right? Because she could hold 4-second hold, 4-second relax 6 times. So 2 seconds more than she could hold, 2 times more than she could hold. You give homework like that. So 4 she could hold, so 6 seconds ka practice. She could do it 6 times, so 8 times ka practice. You understood? So she will do 6-second hold, 6-second relax 8 times. And then she'll give half an hour break to her. She'll go and do her work. And then she will do 2-second hold, 2-second relax 8 times. Okay? 3 times a day, both of them. Why am I doing the longer contraction also and the 2-second hold contraction also? Because our levator muscles are 2 types. Type 1 fiber and type 2 fiber. Type 1 fiber is a long contraction fiber. Her long contraction fiber could hold only 4 seconds long. That is why I'm giving it a little longer, 6 seconds. If I tell her 10 seconds, she won't be able to do. It's like flogging a dead horse. So, you improve. But I also want to exercise a quick contraction fiber, the type 2 fibers. इसके लिए the protocol is 3 times a day you would do it.
for this particular patient, 6-second hold, 6-second relax 8 times, then half an hour break because the muscles gets very tired, and then 2-second hold, 2-second relax 8 times. Okay, then you keep on, and then she comes back next week, and again you take her to manometry. So what happens is you're seeing her muscles being built up. In each sitting, in just to complete the picture, I don't want to go into details of it. In each sitting, in addition to one second. In each setting, in addition to the aneurysm manometry, I will also do electrical stimulation. The probe I use, the electrical probe I use can also give electrical stimulation, and electrical stimulation like lazy man's Kegel. And what it helps to do is it strengthens muscle, it increases tone, it also inhibits involuntary detrusor contraction. Because when you contract pelvic muscles, it sends inhibitory signals to the detrusor muscle. Okay, and all of it's a like a negative sacral neural feedback mechanism. Basically, it sends negative signals. In overactive bladder, what is happening? There's miscommunication between the bladder and the positive signals are going from the bladder, right? It will inhibit those positive signals. So there's an inhibitory negative sacral neural feedback mechanism. Okay, so slowly, you build up the muscles like that. When you build up the muscles like that, what will happen is eventually around, I would do 12 to 15 sittings. Eventually, all women literally can hold 10-second hold, 10-second relax 10 times. Okay, and then half an hour break, 2-second hold, 2-second relax 10 times. So when the muscles are strengthened, then what do? I put them on something called as time delayed voiding. Now, what is that? Okay, so it's like this, if a woman, suppose you and I, like all of us know, we have a functional bladder capacity. Like my bladder will functionally tell me around, my bladder is used to telling me to go to the bathroom at 500 ml, suppose. Dr. Meenal's bladder is used to telling her at 600 ml, suppose. Correct? I can't suddenly ask Meenal to hold 800 ml. You can't do that. So somebody who's gotten used to going at 100 ml, suddenly I can't tell her, "Arey, delay करके 2 घंटे के बाद जाओ." होगा नहीं. It's not, a bladder is a organ party. Her bladder has gotten used to telling her at 100 ml only ki jana hai. Correct? So suddenly I can't make the bladder to go later. So what do? Right? I first strengthen the muscles doing biofeedback or Kegel exercises. If her Oxford score is good, Kegel will work. If Oxford score is not good, then biofeedback and electrical stimulation. I make the muscles very strong. And then what do? I look at a bladder diary. So important to have bladder diary. I will see the lowest interval. Suppose her bladder diary ka lowest interval of 1 hour. She's going to the bathroom every 1 hour. Like that's the least amount of time she would go in. Or else suppose somebody else is going every half an hour. So I will take the lowest interval. Okay. Now what in her, what is happening? Her bladder is dictating to her. But now we will impose schedule on the bladder. So how do I impose schedule on the bladder? Suppose her lowest interval is 1 hour. This week I will tell her to go every 1 hour to the bathroom. Okay, by her, whether she wants to go to the bathroom or not, every 1 hour she has to go to the bathroom. Now next week I will tell her go every 1 hour 15 minutes. Okay, by clock she has to go every 1 hour 15 minutes. Okay, so she's pushing the bladder to 50 by 15 minutes. At the 1 minute point, at a 1 hour point, suppose she starts feeling sensation, hai na, ki aa raha hai, jana hai. The worst thing to do is to run to the bathroom. Then you will have the urgency to go. So what do we tell them? The next week you go 1 hour 15 minutes, but at the 1 hour point, suppose you feel the urge, don't run to the bathroom. Quietly sit down, and we already sent in the type 2 fibers. So do 5 times quick 2-second hold, 2-second relax. Okay, sit down quietly and do the quick 5-second, 2-second hold, 2-second relax 5 times, and then try to distract your mind. So क्या होगा, वो urge की feeling चली जाएगी. Because when you contract, relax, 2-second hold, 2-second relax, 2-second hold, 2-second relax quietly, it suppresses urge. And because you already strengthened the muscle, she's contracting the right way. Understood? Then this next week she's going every 1 hour 15 minutes. The week after she's going every 1.5 hours. The week after she's going every 1 hour 45 minutes. Again she's suppressing urge. अगर पहले आ गया, still suppress. उनको बोलने का कि कभी-कभी you can't suppress. That's fine. But overall you're trying to suppress. Slowly you build up. So it's delayed voiding. Slowly you are building up to 3 hours. Correct? That would be ideal for her. So this is a woman. So what is your first line treatment? Fluid modification, diet modification, pelvic floor physiotherapy and delayed voiding or time voiding as is required, right? Last need will be medication. I'm going to come to medication after this, right? So it is very clear that behavioral therapy works. If you look at any studies, they clearly show, a lot of studies have shown that, uh, pure physiotherapy works even better than even drug therapy. But many of us in practice, we will do everything. First line. So for me, my first line treatment is diet modification, fluid modification, medication, and physiotherapy. Okay, for 3 months. Okay, so I will do combination therapy. This is what I will do. Okay, one more thing is that in addition to other medication which I'm going to tell you now, going forward, I will also give every menopausal woman local estrogen. Okay, I will give her 0.5 gram daily, apply karne ka, 0.5 gram daily when you go to bed at night, you daily for 3 weeks, followed by twice a week for almost 8 months. Understood? Right? Because you have to give local estrogen therapy. Why local estrogen therapy works? Because it builds up it reduces irritability of the irritability and urethritis, which can happen when your mucosa is atrophied, okay, and thinned out. So local estrogen is good, right? And I'm going to go to pharmacology, but iske pehle kuch questions hai kya? Did you all understand this point?
Questions are there, ma'am.
Yeah. Mutation reflex next lecture. Okay. Yeah. What are the questions?
Difference between the urge incontinence and overactive weight bladder.
Okay. Hey, all of them are saying that please continue taking further dates and come. Can you confirm with the Dr. Meena? Can you confirm with the
Kedar sir, I will confirm with
हाँ
Kedar
Bengal
sir.
जाएं इसकी 12th को किसको 12th को है हाँ
Ma'am, students have personally messaged me that they are having exam from 12th. So please try to take lectures.
but
Take
यार
them that.
I am DNB from West Bengal. Dates not declared yet.
Ma'am, mostly of MS and some other institutes maybe.
Okay. I can't take faster than this because if I take faster than this, then people won't understand.
No
Because
problem.
these are not topics whatever, huh?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So one question is, should all components of the definition be present to define OAB? No, not necessary. It's basically urgency, frequency, without lacturia, without incontinence. Okay. So you can have urgency, frequency. You do not 100% need to have nocturia, and you don't need to have urgency incontinence, right? You have to have urgency, frequency, right? Next, nocturia is more than 1 times a day. Is more than 1 time a day. 2 or more times in nocturia. Okay. Urgency and OAB are same. Please explain dry one, right? So, urgency is a sensation. Overactive bladder is the entire group, the whole universe. The whole universe includes urgency. See, a woman with urgency, sensation may not go to the bathroom repeatedly, right? OAB is the entire universe. It has got urgency, it's got frequency. They will actually go to the bathroom more than 8 times a day. They may not have nocturia, and they may not have urgency incontinence, right? So please understand that urgency is different, only a small component of OAB. This is Seema is asking me the question. Please explain dry one. Dry one is basically there are 2 components to voiding, right? First, you have to feel like going to the bathroom, then you void. So in the dry one, they feel like going earlier. The bladder, it's a sensory problem. The bladder tells them to go to the bathroom earlier. That is, but they don't leak. Okay, that is called overactive bladder dry. Did you understand, Seema? Again, Dr. Aditi asked me the same thing. So dry one is just repeated need to go to the bathroom. It's a sensation problem. The bladder is telling them to go earlier, and that is OAB dry. Okay, and OAB wet would be when, in addition, they may or may not have a sensory urgency, but they what definitely will have is a motor problem. Now, when they have a sensation to go to the bathroom, the bladder stops listening to the brain, on its own starts contracting. Okay, that's OAB wet. Did you all understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes or no?
Yes,
The one
yes, ma'am.
One second. Yeah. Next.
Difference between urge incontinence and OAB wet. Okay, first of all, don't call it urge incontinence, urgency incontinence. The term urge has been removed by ICS, International Continence Society. It's called urgency incontinence. And it's the same. OAB wet is the same as urgency incontinence. Okay, but start using, but it's called OAB wet and OAB dry. Okay. Why estrogen? Because in menopausal women, what happens is atrophy occurs, right? When they don't have hormones, their vaginal muscle is atrophied. I mean, the vaginal muscle is atrophied, that can cause irritation, and that irritation, like it's atrophic vaginitis, atrophic cystitis, atrophic urethritis, that can give you the sensation of going to the bathroom earlier. They can have urgency because of that, right? So you should always give estrogen in postmenopausal women. Yes, you can give postmenopausal women recurrent UTI, you can give local estrogen. Estrogen given by PV pessaries, no. We do not have, estrogen is basically, what do you give? You give estradiol, right? So what do you give? Which one you give? You don't give Premarin. You give the other one. What's wrong with me? I can't remember the name. What's wrong with me? I give it every day. I tell you the name of the drug. It's basically estradiol. Estradiol. Sorry. What's wrong with me? What is the drug you give? What is the vaginal cream you give? Every day I give my patients. I'll tell you next time. You don't give Premarin because Premarin gets absorbed into the bloodstream. You don't give conjugated estrogen, okay? Because that gets absorbed into the bloodstream. You want to give the one that Evolon cream. What is wrong with me? Evolon, right? The one that gets absorbed in the bloodstream. Evolon is not Evolon valerate, exactly. And it's not, your Premarin is conjugated equine estrogen. You don't give that. You give Evolon because estradiol valerate, right?
Yes.
Yeah, all of them right. Yeah, it's Evolon. It's Evolon. I give it every day to my patient. Look at this. You give Evolon, you don't give Premarin. Okay. Now, what is the difference between neurogenic bladder and Dr. Ganesh? Please listen to my first lecture. Did you listen to my first lecture? Neurogenic bladder is basically a neurogenic bladder can also have OAB. Remember, but neurogenic bladder has a neurological problem. In OAB, I told you first only. There is no other pathology. You have ruled out pathology. If you rule out pathology and then they have OAB, it's called OAB. In neurogenic bladder, they can have OAB symptoms, but they will have a neurological problem causing it. Okay, that's the difference. Eva Longoria, somebody wrote there. Nice. Okay, yeah. Any other questions? I want to pharmacology. You understood biofeedback. You understood drug modification, you understood delayed voiding, time voiding, understood? So behavioral modification, very important. Fluid and diet chart, very important. Okay. Yeah. Now let me go on to the pharmacology, right? So pharmacology the main treatment is antimuscarinic agents, right? They're first line treatment. However, and there's another drug that's coming called mirabegron. I'm going to talk about it later on. But mainstay earlier was, one second. एक मिनट, हाँ?
Yes, ma'am.
एक मिनट. एक मिनट, I'm just saying, give me एक मिनट, हाँ? There's a patient here.
Sure, ma'am. No problem.
Yeah. The problem with antimuscarinic agent is that they have such severe side effects and limited efficacy that it becomes very difficult for people to take it, right? That's the whole problem, right? So when you have, when you give a drug, antimuscarinic agent, you also have to give a treatment for each. That's the problem about it, right? So, and the thing is that in my practice, it really works well because, in my practice for 3 months, they will come weekly.
है ना? They'll come weekly and they'll undergo biofeedback. उसके साथ वो medication भी लेते होते हैं. So what happens is their compliance का problem होगा. Then because they're coming weekly to me and I spend so much time with them, weekly 1 hour biofeedback, and I'm in touch with them. They listen to me and they will continue with the therapy despite the fact that there are some side effects, right? We can manage them, right? So basically, when you look at anticholinergic drugs, why do they act? How do the anticholinergic agents work? Very simple, right? You all know that for bladder contraction, any muscle contraction, you need acetylcholine, right? Acetylcholine is released. So how do the anticholinergic agents act? They prevent the release of acetylcholine, correct? Right? So now, initially, you had the earlier anticholinergic drugs, right? So you had atropine, which is used, atropine kind of like Levsin, Levbid used long ago, stopped long ago, right? But the last two, oxybutynin and tolterodine, are still being used, right? A lot of doctors still use oxybutynin because these are the like first, like you know, the type, like the first ones, right? They were the older agents, right? The first category of drugs, right? Or anticholinergic agents, right? And oxybutynin still works very well in children, right? So oxybutynin, tolterodine is some two names you have to remember, right? So the brand name of oxybutynin, Ditropan, Ditropan XL, this is also a patch, and tolterodine ka Detrol okay hai, right? So these drugs are still being used for their first line, right? But the first line drugs have a lot of side effects. Why? Because they will act on muscarinic receptors in different parts of the body also, in addition to the bladder one. And that's why they will have a lot of side effects. And I'm going to come to the side effects later on. Because so many side effects, newer anticholinergic came into the market, right? So what are the newer anticholinergics, right? So basically, there is solifenacin. Solifenacin, you know, there are a lot of drugs in the Indian market called Solitin, I mean, multiple drugs like that, right? There's so many brands there. There's solifenacin, right? And solifenacin, the important thing is receptor specific, right? So when it's M3 receptor specific, what happens is that the bladder is impacted more than the other, receptors, and that is why the side effects are lower, right? Then you have darifenacin. Darifenacin also receptor specific, but also it's also called long half life. So you have to give only one dose a day. You don't have to give multiple doses a day, and it's a lot. Third one is trospium. Very important to remember trospium. Why do you remember trospium? Because it's got a large molecular weight. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So in older women, you will give trospium because if you give solifenacin or darifenacin, they can have dizziness, and because the drug can cross the blood-brain barrier, they can have older women. I use trospium because of large molecular weight, it won't cross the blood-brain barrier. Now, one more drug that will be included here, but I don't want you to remember it much, is duloxetine. Now, duloxetine is basically like Cymbalta, right? It's basically those noradrenergic receptor inhibitors, right? So they prevent they block the uptake of both noradrenaline and serotonin, right? Now, duloxetine is used in mixed incontinence. Why it is used in mixed incontinence is that because it not only helps to keep the bladder thoda shan, it also causes constriction of the bladder neck. But that is banned in the United States. And in India, we use it a very short while sometimes in patients with stress incontinence post-surgery. It takes a little while for the sling surgery to act. So you might give duloxetine for a little while till it starts acting. Or you want to postpone surgery, so you might give it a little time. But you can't give it for long because there was severe side effects, right? Now, when you look at the muscarinic receptor, very important to understand why the side effects occur, right? So you have M1 to M5 receptors, correct? Right? So M1 is also in the brain. So if you have non-specific, right? If you need to have M3 specific. You need to have M3 specific drugs, correct? If you have drugs that are not specific, what can happen? They can impact the M1 receptor. So if they impact the M1 receptor, then because it's in the brain, it can cause cognitive dysfunction, impaired learning, correct? If it impacts the M2 receptor, what will happen? It can cause tachycardia. Okay. If it impacts the M3, we wanted to impact M3, right? The specific ones is M3 because this is in the bladder. The problem is, no matter how specific it gets, solifenacin, darafenacin are acting only on M3, so on bladder. But problem is, M3 is there also in the salivary glands and GI tract. So not only it will prevent the bladder from contracting, it will also prevent the salivary glands from contracting, the muscle inlet. It can cause dry mouth. Also, it will also decrease bladder motility and cause constipation. That's a problem. Even the newer drugs can cause dry mouth and constipation because M3 receptors are also there in the mouth, salivary glands, and GI tract. Are you clear? M4, no one knows really where it is. M5 is there in the ciliary eye muscle. And that is why you can, glaucoma patient, you have to be very careful, right? Because if the non-specific receptor drug acts on the M5 receptor, it can cause loss of visual accommodation and worsen close angle glaucoma, right? Are you clear with this? Any questions?
No, ma'am, no questions.
Huh?
No questions, ma'am. You can continue.
Now, one thing you need to remember is this, that bladder muscle has more M2 than M3. Remember that. There are more M2 in the bladder than M3. But still, M3 specific like solifenacin, darafenacin is acts, because even though there are lesser M3 in the bladder as opposed to M2, but since M3 is there only in the bladder, not on the heart, not on the ciliary eye muscle, not on the brain, it's better to give M3 specific drugs, right? So you can see these, right? You can see very easily, right? Why are oxybutynin, tolterodine, and look at trospium, right? All of them. Look at M3 versus M1, right? So M3 versus M1, darafenacin 9.3, right? And if you look at M3 versus M1, oxybutynin 1.5, 0.6. So trospium is not as receptor specific as darafenacin or solifenacin. But you have to still give it in older women because trospium doesn't cause the blood-brain barrier. In older women, that is more important. So even if it's not as M3 specific as darafenacin or solifenacin, you still give trospium in older patients because you don't want it to cause the blood-brain barrier, cause cognitive problems. Correct? Now, it's very clear from this is that, look at this, right? Darafenacin is more specific for M3 than M2, where all the other, and M4 and M5 and M1. See, very clearly seen, right? Now, let's go through each drug. I do not know how much detail you need this in, but I will go through it quickly, right? Solifenacin is a tertiary amine. It's a selective M3 inhibitor. It's metabolized by the liver. It's highly selective for bladder. But it can, so one good about solifenacin is that amongst all drugs, it is less specific for salivary gland, and so dry mouth is lesser than the other drugs. It's got long half-life, 48 hours, so use it once a day. Dose is 5 to 10 milligram once a day, and main side effects is constipation and less dry mouth. Okay? It's very clear. It's very specific. Tertiary amine, long half-life. So I'm using it one time a day. You can give 5 mg or you can give 10 mg. So you start with 5 mg, it doesn't work, you can increase the dose to 10 mg. Okay? Constipation, dry mouth. More constipation, less dry mouth. Darafenacin. Darafenacin, same thing. It's a tertiary amine, M3 specific, metabolized by liver. It's either given 7.5 milligram or 15 milligram once a day. It's another M3 specific drug, right? Main side effect, constipation and dry mouth. So you start off with solifenacin. You start off with 5 mg, make it 10 mg. It doesn't work. You can give darafenacin because some people will respond to darafenacin over solifenacin, right? Trospium. Trospium is quaternary amine. Correct? It's not metabolized by the liver. And good thing is quaternary amine. It doesn't cause a blood-brain barrier, and dose is 20 milligram twice a day. Either you can give a 20 milligram twice a day, or you can give extended release drug 60 milligram once a day. Okay? Okay? And it has, the only thing about trospium is it can reduce the tone of smooth muscle in the bladder. Okay? Tone kam hota hai, but it's okay. That's not too bad. Okay? So obviously, should M1, M3, this chart is very good. This chart is very good. Once you understand this chart, then you can understand what are the side effects very easily, right? Brain, heart, ciliary eye muscles, salivary gland, and GI tract, in addition to bladder. So, inka side effects ho jayega. So, the side effect profile is something very easy to understand, right? So, basically, you have to, when you, what are the precautions, right? So, you are careful to give it in. When a woman has significant bladder outlet obstruction, you'll be careful about giving it.
If there's decreased GI, so if the patient already has constipation, you cannot give solifenacin, right? If you have controlled narrow angle glaucoma, you'll be careful about it, right? So precaution there basically is like has in significant bladder outlet obstruction, decreased GI motility, controlled narrow angle glaucoma, renal inefficiency, and hepatic impairment, you have to be careful. When do you contraindicate it? When is it contraindicated? Contraindicated in when they have retention issues, they come only with retention, then you can't give it, or they come with gastric retention, they have severe ODS, obstructed defecation syndrome or constipation, they've got uncontrolled narrow angle glaucoma, if they got hypersensitivity to drug, or they got pregnancy, or they're nursing, you cannot give it. It's contraindicated anti-muscarinic medication, right? How does it act? It prevents, basically, if you look at this chart on the right, you have normally acetylcholine. So when you have basically at the point where the preganglionic neuron meets a postganglionic neuron, you have acetylcholine release, right? And then acetylcholine will then act on the smooth muscle, right? Muscarinic receptor. So the drug comes in and prevents attachment of acetylcholine to the muscarinic receptor on the smooth muscle, right? So it prevents inappropriate detrusor muscle contraction, right? Now the problem with OAB medication is that persistence is very, 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 very poor because so many side effects. 50% of patients do not refill their prescription a second time, this study showed. Only 15% patients will continue therapy throughout the first year. My results are far better because I make the patient come back weekly because my first time treatment is diet modification, fluid modification, medication, and physiotherapy. So they're coming weekly. While they're doing the tire chart, fluid chart, and taking the medication, they're also coming weekly to me for biofeedback. So what happens is that if they're not compliant, I can talk to them, solve their issues. They're constipated, I can give them something for the constipation. If they got dry eyes, I can give something for it. So they tide it over. But normally urologists क्या करते हैं, gynec लोग क्या करते हैं, अरे patient आया, they won't want to give diet chart, fluid chart, कोई physiotherapy नहीं करेगा, medicine दिख के देगा, बोला 3 घर में आके लो, they will never take it, right? They will stop taking it because it's very difficult to take this medication, right? You can clearly see, right? So adherence is so low. Only 20% patients on OAB medication remain persistent at 6 months. Only 18% of patients on OAB medication remain persistent at 1 year, right? So they are less likely to remain on OAB medication than any other drug class, right? So there's another new drug that's come in, and when I was in the US doing fellowship, it was already there. And when I came back to India at that time, it did not come to the market. So it's very nice that last 2 years, it's been made in the market, right? So now, if you want the bladder muscle to be shant, there are 2 things you can do. You can either prevent its contraction, or you can promote its relaxation. Correct? Right? You can either promote relaxation pathway, or you can prevent contraction pathway. So anti-muscarinic kya karta hai? It's preventing contraction. And the newer group of drug, that is beta-3 agonist, what does it do? It basically mediates, it supports the beta-3 adenoreceptor mediated pathway for relaxation. Okay, so you know every muscle has the beta-3 adenoreceptor mediated CAMP pathway for relaxation. I don't need you to remember this. I mean, it's biochemistry, and it's okay if you don't remember, right? So basically, you know, like when the sodium attaches to beta-3, this is the beta-3 adenoreceptor. When the beta-3 adenoreceptor is stimulated, acetylcholine becomes CAMP. This is not acetylcholine. This is what? No, adenyl cyclase. So when you have stimulation of the beta-3 agonist, adenyl cyclase will be converted into CAMP, and the CAMP promotes relaxation, and that is promoted. The relaxation is even more supported by entry of calcium and removal of potassium, right? So what happens is you don't need to remember this pathway. Okay, this is biochemistry. But what you remember is that beta-3 adenoreceptor mediated adenyl cyclase CAMP pathway, when it's promoted, what will happen is relaxation is promoted. Understood? So basically, beta-3 adenoreceptor mediated adenyl cyclase CAMP pathway is promoted by the new group of drugs called as beta-3 agonist drugs. Okay. So what it does is it helps in relaxing the retrosum smooth muscle. It decreases the afferent signaling from the bladder. So because it during the storage time, right? So urgency frequency is a storage problem. Correct? When the bladder is supposed to store urine and remain quiet, it's not remaining quiet. Correct? There's a lot of afferent signaling from the bladder.
So what does the drug do? It relaxes the smooth muscle. It decreases the afferent signaling from the bladder. And then when the afferent signaling from the bladder is reduced, obviously it improves bladder compliance on filling and increases bladder capacity. Okay. I won't go into details of it. I don't think people are going to ask you this, right? So all this chart is there here, right? Activate ideal cyclase with subsequent formation of cyclic AMP to induce direct muscle relaxation. Okay, what adrenergic receptors do is they stimulate large conductance of the calcium activated potassium channels in bladders and mediates the reduction to smooth muscle. Okay. So basically, the cell stimulation, when the beta 3 adrenergic receptor is stimulated, it stimulates the large conductance calcium activated potassium channels in the bladder muscle. And that causes relaxation of the reducer smooth muscle. Okay. So you start, is basically available in 2 doses, 25 mg and 50 mg. You start with 25 mg once daily without food, and normally within 8 weeks is effective. Based on the patient response, you can increase the, somebody asked me a question. Isha raised hand. What is it?
By mistake, she raised, ma'am.
Okay, by mistake.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Neha raised hand. Again, by mistake.
I'll ask. Neha? Yes, it was by mistake, ma'am.
When my screen will share, it keeps saying, okay. 1 second. Yeah, sorry, patient does not answer. Okay, you start with 25 mg, and you can generally the dose is 50 mg. You know, 25 mg kabhi kaam nahi karta. The thing about both anti-muscarinic agents and and beta-adrenergic agents, beta-3 agonist, is that it is generally takes time to act, and beta-3 agonist takes at least 8 weeks. So you have to tell the patient to wait. Do not just like jump to conclusion on working. So please wait before you do any dose adjustment. In patient with renal impairment, you don't need any dose adjustment. In patient with mild and moderate, you require. Okay, sorry. Mild and moderate renal impairment, you don't need any dose adjustment, and you don't in hepatic में mild में नहीं लगता dose adjustment. Okay, I all these papers. These are all papers show that they are effective. Remember, enough studies will show that they are effective, right? So there's significant reduction in number of incontinence episodes, mutation episodes in the mirabegron group. Mirabegron is the brand name. The first drug that came into market was called mirabegron. There are long-term treatment, long-term surveillance. So 3-year surveillance study also shown great results, right? So basically, the mirabegron can act as long as 3 years, acts really, really well, right? So in my practice, I give both solifenacin and mirabegron. Okay, now I'm going to ask you whether you have any questions in the, yeah. So once the patient improves with conservative therapy, can medication be stopped? What I do, basically, I will put them, I will do, like when they come to me, I will do diet chart, fluid chart, medication, physiotherapy. Make the muscles really, really, really strong. Put them on time voiding. Get them to like delay, come to 3 hours. Then slowly taper the muscle medicine out. How long can anticholinergic be done? They can be given for a long time. No one exactly knows how many years, but I have got patients 3 to 4 years also. No problem. But when they do good physiotherapy, they're mild, then they only need to एक बार physiotherapy kara and then time voiding करके we have got them voiding every 3 hours, and slowly you can taper off the medicine. Any other question? Please, not slide. Ma'am, please show slide. Which slide is the one to show?
Ma'am, that time your presentation was not on the slideshow mode. It was on the whole window. Therefore, she said that please start on the slideshow.
Okay, अभी हो गया. अभी समझा. I want to show you. ये सब समझा ना? ये सब हो गया ना? अभी समझा ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No questions. Everybody understood everything?
Yes, ma'am. Mostly.
People are not bored.
No, ma'am.
Sometimes it can get very boring.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, once again, we share. Yeah. Now the remaining part I'm going to do very quickly because I don't think they're going to bother you too much on these, right? But you need to just know these things, right? So first line management करा, फिर वो fail हो गया, medication भी दिया. Then at this point I would do urodynamics to understand whether I've understood or not. Because ये सब करने के बाद भी अगर treatment नहीं successful रहा, then I would do urodynamics. And then there are, so this is the AUA guidelines, right? So basically there are three things that we can do. One is peripheral tibial nerve stimulation. Then I can do Botox. And third thing I can do is sacral neuromodulation. So there are three different treatments I can do if the first line fails and medication fail, right? That is peripheral tibial nerve stimulation, Botox injection into the bladder, and sacral neuromodulation. So I'm going to come to each of them, right? This is the AUA guideline, American Neurological Society Association guidelines, right? So basically, third line treatment would be first is percutaneous tibial nerve stimulation. Now, this doesn't really work well. It's 60% success rates maximum. In our, when I, it's not yet come to India that much. It's not come to India actually. I think they're going to come to India. But when I was in the United States and I was doing my fellowship program, we would do a stopgap, right? So between first line conservative treatment नहीं medication नहीं काम करा, before we do Botox, ये थोड़ा time के लिए 12 weeks मिलता है बीच में. Patient will try this. काम करा great, नहीं काम करा तो Botox करना या sacral neuromodulation. So what is the principle behind this, right? Basically, so why does overactive bladder occur? Overactive bladder occurs because there is miscommunication between the bladder and the brain. So what do you want to do? You want to interfere with the communication of the bladder with the brain, correct? So how do you interfere? You want to interfere with the S3 nerve, right? Because that is the sacral nerve 3 is a nerve, that's a bladder nerve, right? You want to interfere with its transmission of symptoms, of afferent signals, correct? So if I want to attack the S3 nerve and neuromodulate it, either I can directly go through S3 nerve to neuromodulation, or I can try to irritate or modulate one of its branches. And what is one of the branches of S3 nerve? Tibial nerve, right? And because I'm doing tibial nerve, and tibial nerve is so far away from the bladder, and I'm trying to think that tibial nerve करा तो बोला कि S3 को बात करेगा, फिर S3 का neuromodulation करेगा, तो वो दूर से होता है. So that obviously its success rate is not great. Basically, it's an in-office thing. It's got an acupuncture needle like this. You know, एक acupuncture जैसा needle होता है. You see this acupuncture जैसा needle होता है, and then this is a grounding lead. है ना, grounding lead attach होता है side of the leg पे, foot पे, and then this acupuncture needle ना basically, see how this is. ये ना, ये आपका tibial nerve कहाँ है? It is 2 fingers posterior and proximal to the medial malleolus, correct? Right? So ये यहाँ आप उसको needle को डालोगे and you will do electrical stimulation. Okay, you will, how to do electrical stimulation is same electrical stimulation like हम biofeedback में करते हैं. हम क्या करते हैं कि उसको करंट को बढ़ाते हैं till it's comfortable enough and not causing pain, pinching or scratch. ट्रीटमेंट होता है तो क्या होता है, it's supposed to neuromodulate. It's like a gate theory. You know, why do you even pain के लिए हम, how we apply that balm, and the balm irritates, so it overwhelms the signal of the pain. It's something like that, right? So you kind of do neuromodulation. You're passing electrical current stimulation through these nerves, so that you're hoping that the S3 का काम को वो suppress कर रहा है. Okay, and if you see the study, 2-year follow-up regimen, it confirmed as a treatment option for resistant OAB, but only around 60%. And in long-term use, very few people will continue with therapy because the effectiveness decreases with time. Okay. Any questions?
No, ma'am. No question.
Okay, so peripheral tibial nerve stimulation is the
third line treatment. So if you look at guidelines now, in my own practice, for me, first line is diet modification, fluid modification, medication, physiotherapy. So medication for me is first line. But if you look at guidelines, the way they will tell you is diet modification, fluid modification, behavioral medication modification, and for exercise are first line. And then second line is pharmacotherapy. And third line is all of the other things I'm telling you. Okay, the way guidelines stated. But I do not like it because I want compliance from the patient. So what I do is physiotherapy takes time to act. Correct? अगर मैंने medication नहीं दिया, खाली physiotherapy करा and diet and food modification करा, right? Then what happens is that it takes time to act. Then they lose compliance. So if you give medication, you're doing the eye chart, fluid chart. If you're doing physiotherapy, then within no short time only they become continent. तो तब तक ना वो मसल को strong कर देने का. Correct? And then slowly you can taper off. Ma'am, medication to be given for how long? Medication can be given for years on end. No problem. In mild OAB, after I have strengthened the pelvic muscles, I might try to taper off the medicines. But I can also give you combination, right? Many of my patients get combination medication. They'll get sulfasalazine 5 milligram, वो नहीं काम कर 10 milligram. They'll get also mirabegron, right? They will get beta-3 adrenergic agonist 50 mg. दोनों मिलता है. So I can taper off. So depending upon severity, etc. But they can be given for long. 2 साल 3 साल भी दे सकते हैं आराम से. Now I will go on to, okay. What will be, 1 second. क्या question है?
What drug is to be given in overactive bladder with glaucoma patients?
You can give mirabegron. Okay. The only place where mirabegron is contraindicated is patient with hypertension. Remember, I forgot to tell you the side effect. Right? Mirabegron should not be given in patients with hypertension because so you can give mirabegron in controlled hypertension patients. You cannot give it in uncontrolled hypertension patients because they can have sudden spikes. So always understand कि उनको. So when I give mirabegron, I always ask them to measure blood pressure. Older people. Okay. 1 second. क्या question है? नहीं. So in my practice, I will start everything together. Diet modification, fluid modification, medication. Physiotherapy generally takes 12 weeks. Okay. तो 3 महीने के लिए चलता रहता है ये सब. Diet modification, fluid modification, medication, physiotherapy. Okay. And 3 महीने के बाद अगर कुछ भी नहीं काम करा, then I will do urodynamics. Okay. And then I will go on to other treatments. But medication will continue. But generally 70% of patients, 80% of patients, मेरे practice में बहुत कम botox लगता है because I do such hardcore biofeedback. बहुत time लगता है इसमें. It works. Okay. Physiotherapy generally 12 weeks. And drugs are given along with it. But if you want to go textbook guidelines wise, then you 12 weeks के लिए behavioral modification physiotherapy, biofeedback, वो नहीं काम करना तो drugs आते हैं. But ideally you should give it together. You understood why, right? Okay. Any other question? Did you understand real Veena?
Real Veena. Yes, ma'am. You can go
I'm
ahead,
asking.
ma'am.
एक मिनट. Okay. Okay. Then you have Botox, right? Now Botox into the bladder, right? So Botox can only be used in overactive bladder wet. Botox cannot be used in overactive bladder dry. Remember this very, very, very importantly. Okay?
cannot be used in overactive bladder dry, cannot use in sensory urgency. Only in overactive bladder wet. Why? Because how does Botox act? Botox acts by preventing the release of acetylcholine. Correct? So the only and prevents contraction. So contraction किसमें हो रहा है? It is happening in overactive bladder wet. It's not happening in overactive bladder dry. You can only use overactive bladder wet, not using the sensory issue, right? So what do? You inject Botox into the bladder muscle, right? What does it do? It blocks the nerve activity in the muscles and causes temporary reduction in muscle activity by preventing the release of acetylcholine. Okay, it generally lasts from 3 to 12 months. बोल रहे हैं bell curve efficacy मतलब its efficacy doesn't last for more than 6 to 9 months actually. But if you go एकदम limits 3 to 12 months है, but generally it will act for 6 months. Okay. And because you are injecting Botox into the bladder and the bladder muscle not contracting, it can retain urine. है ना? If you put more Botox into the bladder, it can cause retention issues. And then when it has retention issues, it can lead to urinary tract infection. Okay. Right? So that is what. So they can have higher rates of retention and urinary tract infection. Right? And long-term efficacy effects are not known. No one knows how many times, like, because it can act only for 6 months. I have to repeat Botox injection. Now there are not enough studies to tell you कितने बार repeat कर सकता है. 3 बार करके हो गया है लोगों का. उसके बाद कितने टाइम करना है? One second, I'm just changing my room. My mother wants to sleep. So 1 second, I'm going to the other room. One second.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
One second. I'm putting on the light. Yeah. So okay. So basically, if you put 2 months Botox into the bladder, it can cause retention of urine, and with the retention of urine, there can be urinary tract infection. Okay. Now, how do you do it? Basically, number of units. Basically, if you have aortic bladder, you put 100. If you have neurogenic bladder, you put 200. Like I told you, neurogenic bladder may you have nerve problems, right? You have a neurological problem, right? So like, so how do you inject throughout the bladder? Okay, you avoid the dome, because if you have dome injection, it can have potential for intraperitoneal injection, and there's difficulty of injection in the dome, right? So basically, it's like this, right? You kind of around put तुम्हारा 100 यूनिट होता है, उस 100 यूनिट का आप क्या करोगे? आप 10 ml का आप 10 ml में कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करोगे, एंड तुम half ml you will keep injecting 20 times. पूरा एक है ना, you don't have to go into details of it. Basically, how we do it, we then like you 1 second. I'll just show you 1 second. Yeah. So basically, this is the bladder. This is the bladder, right? This is the whole bladder, right? And this is a trigone, right? So I might start taking 5 injections this way, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I say na, like 20 times, 20, like at 1 centimeter difference. Like I can like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injections. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injections. So you can plan it out, right? So put 20 injections डालना है पूरे bladder में, prevent not putting on the dome. So you're injecting 0.5 ml of the Botox that has been constituted in the 100 units जो है आपका, जिसका आपने वो बनाया है injection, you made a syringe of it of 10 ml in the agent that they provide, and वो क्या करो कि वो पूरा 20 sites पे आप inject करते हो 0.5 ml at each point. So what it does is it properly distributes through the bladder. You can inject it submucosally, or you can inject it in the muscle itself. Doesn't matter. You can, when you inject it submucosally, it will actually raise a bleb. When you do, and you do it through cystoscopy, ना आप क्या करोगे? Scope डालोगे. Scope डाल के side channel जो है ना, like a histoscope has a side channel. Cystoscope has a side channel. You will go through the side channel. You have a long injection needle, goes inside. Very simple. If you know how to do cystoscopy, you can easily do Botox injection. अब जाके आप क्या करोगे? You will actually like 1 centimeter distance पे आप 0.5 ml डालते रहोगे, 20 injection करोगे पूरे bladder muscle में, bladder wall में, except the dome. They used to say trigone में नहीं डालना है, लेकिन अभी बोलते you can put in the trigone. Okay, what do you do if PVR is high? When the PVR is high, you actually counsel the woman and tell the woman that आपका PVR high हो सकता है, right? So they have to, first of all, you have to inform the women that this is a possible side effect. If the PVR is high, जनरली क्या होता है ना, 2-3 हफ्ते में वो थोड़ा सेटल हो जाता है. But if PVR is high, then we will put on self catheterization, intermittent catheterization बोलते हैं, right? We will train them कि घर पे you don't put them on Foley's. Okay. हमारे में like urogynecology, I have a lot of patients on intermittent catheterization. Okay, so what is intermittent catheterization? Basically, these are small catheters, right? You have those K90 बोल के होता है ना, K90 they come in different sizes. आप लोग रबर कैथेटर देखते हो अपने गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल्स में, बट दिस प्लास्टिक K90 है ना, सो K90 बोल के होता है, दैट आर डिफरेंट साइजेस में आता है, एंड यू ट्रेन द पर्सन टू एक्चुअली catheterize themselves and drain out urine. They will do 3 to 5 times. So what they'll do, they'll go to the bathroom, pee as well as they can, and फिर आके they will put a K90 and drain out the remaining. Okay, then they do it 3 to 5 times a day. Okay, you put them on intermittent self-catheterization. Okay, it's called ISC, intermittent self-catheterization. That's what you do. But थोड़ा time में it comes 3-4 weeks में it reduces. PVR comes back to normal. Any other question? Understood Botox?
Yes, ma'am. No questions.
Okay. क्या हो रहा है? स्क्रीन हो क्या शेयर हो रहा है? नहीं. हाँ.
Yes. हो रहा है.
Yeah. So basically, if you see this, right, I don't think you need to go into judge great details. Only thing is, this is NDO mean neurogenic reducer overactivity. Idiopathic reducer overactivity, right? Idiopathic meaning OR2 bladder is idiopathic, right? There's no cause for it, right? So dose, the only thing you remember is this, कि dose to आपका अगर न्यूरोजेनिक होगा तो आप 200 यूनिट्स लग डालोगे, आपका अगर इडियोपैथिक OR2 bladder होगा आप 100 ml डालोगे, बस 100 ml डालोगे. Remember only that much. Everything else is what I've told you is all that you need to remember, right? And there's enough study that shows it works. There are RCT, this is a meta-analysis of RCTs done, which clearly showed that OAB may, but it only works in OAB wet, doesn't work in OAB dry, right? And what I found is that most patients will do well. This is a paper on clean intermittent catheterization rates, right? So what is the thing is a real world study of non-neurogenic OAB patients treated with Botox suggests that CIC rate is lower than the report. तो पहले बहुत बोलते थे कि बहुत लोगों को retention होता था, that you have a lot of patients you have to do ISC. However, and later studies have shown that there is a far lesser. If you put 100 units, it works quite well, right? Lastly, the last therapy is, I've done this multiple times in the United States. In India, we have not been able to do it because it's very, very, very expensive. 5 lakhs लगता है, and no one gives 5 lakhs for treating a woman. No families, India is patriarchal, right? But what is sacral neuromodulation? Now, I told you what is peripheral tibial nerve stimulation. We are stimulating the tibial nerve. Now, sacral neuromodulation is direct stimulation of the or neuromodulation of the S3 nerve. Correct? So basically, it's a battery. Okay, it's a lead. एक lead जाता है. You basically put it from the back. You go through the intervertebral space, and you go. The lead is inserted to the S3 nerve, and it attached to a battery, and that battery is actually embedded in your back, in your fat of the back. ये battery जो है, आप वो gluteal region के fat में embed करते हो, वो 5 साल के रहता है, and you can adjust. Then what it does is एक electrical pulses आता रहता है वो lead में, so it neuromodulates the S3 nerve. Okay, and you can kind of change the calibration. You can calibrate. You can do more stimulation. You can do less stimulation, right? So basically, that's in short sacral neuromodulation. It's an implantable system that stimulates the sacral nerves, modulating the neural reflexes and influence the bladder flow. So sacral neuromodulation has multiple uses, right? It can be used for both OAB dry and OAB wet. Very severe, huh? It is the last line therapy, right? So it can be used for both OAB dry and OAB wet. It can also be used for fecal incontinence, right? Idiopathic fecal incontinence, and it can also be used for idiopathic retention issues. So when some patients come to you with retention issues, idiopathic, no reasons, it can be used. And obviously in patients who fail all conservative treatment, right? How does it work? The way it works is inhibition of afferent and efferent, right? So the efferent D, it will inhibit the spinal tract neurons of the micturition reflex. So micturition reflex I will take in the next class, 100%. Today I'll take POPQ, and then we will take prolapse and micturition reflex in the next class. Okay. So it will inhibit the spinal tract neuron in the micturition reflex. It inhibits the interneurons involved in the spinal segmental reflexes. It inhibits the postganglionic neurons directly. It inhibits primary afferent pathways and also suppresses the guarding reflexes, right? So basically, इसमें क्या होता है ना, it makes the bladder शांत, both afferent शांत करता है, वो efferent शांत करता है. इसके लिए you can use both in OAB dry and OAB wet. Okay? Now, I don't think you need to know that. इतना भी मालूम पड़ा ना, बहुत हो गया. I don't think you should know more than that. Okay? इतना ही याद रहना चाहिए कि what happens is that basically ना, it's like a battery like this. ऐसे battery आता है, and वो battery पीछे spine में जाता है. So basically ना, see, I'll just show you 1 second. हाँ, देखो, you know, there's a lead that goes inside. So you have 2 stages. इतना ही याद रखो. You have a first phase and second phase. First phase में क्या करते हैं? हमें temporary lead आते हैं. Temporary lead, it's like a lead. It's like a straight needle that you put through the intervertebral disc parallel to the S3 nerve. वो क्या करता है? And you attach it through a temporary battery. Okay, first phase में ऐसा करते हैं. And then you wait for 1 week. 7 to 10 days you wait to see impact. अगर 7 to 10 days में उसका incontinence कम होता है, then you will put a permanent lead in. So अगर permanent battery डालोगे और अपना वो बरी करते हैं हम, वो बरी मत से इसकी हमने रखी है, ये lead दिखता है ना, ऐसे lead, ये गया है lead, ये फ्लोरो पे दिखता है वो lead जाते हुए. This lead has gone parallel to the S3 nerve. Okay, and वो बैटरी जो है वो embed करते हो in the fat of the gluteal region, and it stays there for 5 years. You have to change the battery once in 5 years. I've done this multiple times in the United States. In India, impossible for people to afford. It's very expensive. And enough studies show that it's effective. You don't need to know the results of it. It's also as effective. Botox and them is equivalent. Okay? इतना याद रखो और कुछ याद मत रखो. Okay? So basically, OAB treatment guideline, right? So आप क्या करोगे? You will do initial screening, you will do bladder symptom questionnaire, you will do urinalysis, you will do PVR, you do bladder diary. सब करने के बाद you will know it's OAB or mixed incontinence. अगर mixed incontinence है, तो you will treat, even in mixed incontinence you will treat OAB, because OAB सब conservative management है, medication है, physiotherapy है. While you're trying to treat the SUI, you will first do this. उसके बाद आप SUI को tackle करोगे. Right? अगर प्योर है तो भी anyway first time करोगे, right? अगर वो fail हुआ तो either you will do PTNS, Botox or sacral neuromodulation. Okay? Thank you. Any questions? I have completed incontinence completely. I have completed your evaluation. I've taught you SUI and I've also taught you OAB. Okay. Phenol injection used for OAB. No, I don't want to even teach you. फिनॉल है ही नहीं. अगर वो एग्जाम में आता है तो उनको गुस्सा करो. Last slide, please. 1 second, I'll show you.
The flow chart, I guess. Flow
Yes,
chart of.
I got. हाँ, दिखा रही हूँ. I'll leave it here.
Yes,
Any
yes,
other
ma'am.
questions? Read out the questions. I can't see the question when I'm on my. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
किसने कुछ लिखा है क्या ऐसे? कोई लिख सकता
Ma'am,
है?
request. Yes, annotation, sir. I'll clear it up.
No, don't worry. Okay. Okay, I will show you the TOT TVT surgeries. I will need 3 more lectures. I wish I can take beyond 11th. Yeah, कल तो नहीं ले सकती. कल I have I'm a TED fellow this year, so I've got my TED का thing tomorrow. IAC and CIC same, yes. I will show you TOT TVT surgery next time. I'll take PopQ now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else? Any other question?
No, ma'am, you can go ahead with the POQ, ma'am.
Any patient with raised PVR intermittent catheterization in treatment? Yes. So biofeedback first. When they have got intermittent, when they have got raised PVR, then one of the things that you rule out is the fact that whether they have, I told you, a lot of patients will have pelvic floor dyssynergia. They don't relax the pelvic floor. First step of voiding is pelvic floor relaxation. So I do hardcore biofeedback, train them how to relax the pelvic floor, try to treat their anxiety, put them on medication, and do biofeedback. अगर वो सब नहीं काम करा, then only intermittent catheterization. Okay. Okay. Please take class after 11 June also. Yes. Okay. Now I will go on to PopQ.
Yes, ma'am.
I will teach you PopQ today, and I will teach you oral prolapse next time. Okay.